Hello and welcome back, honest men and bonny lassies. This is part 2 in the mini-series, and I cannot thank those enough who may have liked and shared previous parts. A wee serotonin release from you lot there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm just stoked that we're on our way together in this deep trust journey. In this part, we discuss denuclearization, equality from the top down, and justice. I do hope we will be dancing come the end. My dad taught me that trust, once lost, is difficult to regain. From the brutal invasion of a neighbour, reported atrocities committed, international law disregarded, and most chat that comes from the Russian Federation, Turkey's communication channels, the trust has long gone. How can you collaborate effectively with one you cannot trust? And how can their current government push agenda items, let alone have veto rights on the UN councils now? One thing is for certain, these international organisations surely do not function correctly and are obsolete if authoritarian regimes have veto rights. Are there any proposals in hand to try and rectify this? According to the UN Charter, there is no mechanism to remove a permanent member of the Security Council. I think maybe amendments are needed here. Do you not agree? Actually, if equality is something we really want to promote in this world, and even if it isn't, why are there veto powers at all? Because veto seats have a so-called nuclear deterrent and are protecting everyone from an outcome of mutually assured destruction? With one misstep, it could change life as we know it. And this is a surefire way to the highway to hell, an unparalleled death, destruction and misery, and not to mention the trillions upon trillions of dollars that have been spent in the world to this point in time on the whole process since the Manhattan Project's inception in 1942. It's beyond ludicrous. Who wants to keep spending money on nuclear arms? Blink and let's get them telt. For those unfamiliar with our angry Scots vernacular there, telt means told. So to be clear, let's get the elite that are spending money on any aspect of a nuclear deterrent that we think this issue needs addressed pronto. So the risk is eradicated and these monies can be repurposed for good, hopefully. Do you think the elites know your opinion on nuclear warheads? Have you told them? I haven't, but please let's do so together. The Value Life organisation would like to help progress denuclearisation to safeguard civilisation long term and facilitate its advancement. And so, if this particular message regarding denuclearisation resonates with you, please make a mental note, good people, to like and share, or like and retweet at Do You Value Life's latest tweets, where we will be addressing this message to the elite, local politicians, podcasters, prominent personnel, local to national media outlets, and any other organisations with clout. We will also be sending the YouTube video link on Twitter to nations that have signed the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons and associated organisations that are championing the cause, like the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament and the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. As per the Value Life financial distribution plan mentioned previously, a large portion of any funding we may receive down the line will likely go towards the cause. The intention here is to identify and hopefully collaborate with those with the most clout that are singing the right tune to progress denuclearisation and remove all roadblocks being encountered. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. But with you subscribing to this channel on YouTube, perhaps clickety-clicking a few other buttons in support, it will facilitate networking capabilities to arrange meetings to discuss, plan and expedite safe denuclearisation. Of course, there may be political undercurrents at play, guarded by the elite, and we may be oversimplifying the matter here, but perhaps not. Things usually boil down to two things in the political arena: money and power. Together we can not just drive denuclearisation to the forefront of the elite's agendas, but hold them accountable to deliver denuclearisation properly. I fully understand it's a mire of complexity, and I cannot wait for you and your trusted network to help push this message and to, as one may say in Scotland, breenge right in about it. Apologies again for the colloquialism, but they are fun in my opinion. To breenge in about it means to plunge right in. In so doing, we can then shed the brilliant, largely underappreciated and miraculous light on the roadblocks, assess who they may be benefiting, and make an informed decision if they should be removed to better serve not just the elite's agenda or even us as the value life community, but all of humanity. The dreamer in me would like the US, France and the UK to race to pledge to give up their veto powers in the interests of equality, and maybe as an apology on behalf of their people for any perceived wrongdoings their elite and governments may have been responsible for around the globe, and promise to lead or facilitate global denuclearization and start building deep trust. This would be a dramatic shift, but there are ways to a world without veto powers. Baby step after initial baby step. For example, as a start, a committee or panel from numerous nations without veto powers or nuclear weapons with high democratic and low corruption index scores could draw up processes for proposed voting systems to explore and fund case studies for review, acceptance, testing and verification. Now, more on this concept a little later. In the interests of impartiality again, what sort of geopolitical undercurrents have some Western powers also sown with their illegal warring post-World War II with nukes in their arsenal? You don't really have to posture if you have them. And how do you build trust with anyone associated with children's deaths on their hands? Yes, there are huge protests, but no accountability for the devastation caused. Illegal wars should be stopped as soon as possible to avoid escalation, and the elite instigators and collaborators brought to trial. This would be much easier done without weapons of mass destruction on the table, particularly in the cases those nuclear-armed nations may be involved. Other well-intentioned allied nations are just unable to intervene due to the nuclear threat posed, or perhaps because they are within the nuclear power's sphere of influence. How many children have lost their opportunity to life due to a so-called weaponized deterrent? One child is one too many. Some democratically elected US presidents and Westminster leaders and their associated cabinet personnel should be held accountable for their actions. In so doing, they would be also given an opportunity to offer defence of the socio-political undercurrents in more detail and increased transparency. As a free and civil society, we cannot accept children being murdered. Gonna no do that. Now, we referenced a comedy sketch in Chewing the Fat there, but in this case there's nothing to laugh about. So those unfamiliar with the Scottish vernacular again, gonna no do that means, are you going to please refrain from doing that? It is difficult to compare, but if you simplify it, what is the difference from the US and Westminster leaders launching the invasion of Iraq due to fabrications regarding them having nukes and Russia invading Ukraine because of their propaganda regarding denazification? They are both completely unjust. Yes, quite disparate situations, but regardless, wars kill children, and it's worth stressing again, this is unacceptable. Please let me interject here with what could be perceived as a rather disrespectful quick note, but not to mention would be even more non-legit. When I talk about the war in Ukraine, I do not mean to disregard the plight of others suffering wars in Mexico, the Middle East and Africa right now, which do not even get half the attention in Western media. More children undoubtedly being murdered. I would certainly like the Value Life organisation to revisit and explore these topics at some point in the future, as soon as there's capacity. One would think that there should be far more robust accountability measures for decisions made that may threaten any child's well-being. If people lose their children due to illegal wars, I cannot truly empathise with this, but I can fully accept the victims' families and friends and compatriots' antipathy towards the evildoers for generations. Justice and law is not prevailing here. Maybe you are of a different opinion. Next up in part 3 of the mini-series, we talk a little bit about NATO and Ukrainian geopolitical undercurrents, freedom and how Russia are redrawing the Iron Curtain with their wonderful ability to disregard treaties and laws and produce propaganda to hoodwink their populace. Please do like, share, subscribe and all that jazz, blah de blah. Unfortunately, it's actually fundamental if the value life community is going to flourish and push these agenda items. In the interim, let's all try and relax if we can, do a little dance, make a little love, be kind and breathe. Oh, and I forgot to mention, there is a link to inspirational tunes with each episode in the YouTube video description to help the message soar. Feel free to post us a tune and or comment in response. We'd very much like that. I cannot wait to see you next time. Means solidarity, right? We are the people.